A family member screamed, "You're in a forking cult," in my face when I became a coach. Is life coaching a cult? Well, I would argue that maybe some subsets of it are. And it appears as though this woman who went viral's family thinks it is. So let's take a look and discuss it together. Shout out to This Is Mallory over on Instagram for sending this over my way. Let's get into it. First slide reads, a family member screamed, "You're in a forking cult," in my face when I became a coach. So I poured more Kool-Aid, became the best coach/cult leader, and brainwashed hundreds of humans to make their dreams come true. Oh my God. We are going to get into the caption, but first let me say that in my opinion, allegedly, this is a textbook example of cognitive dissonance. And I say this for a couple reasons. Let's get into it. Slide number 1, where she's talking about her family calling her joining the coaching industry a cult. The way she frames it in this particular video, especially as we lead into slide number 2, it makes it seem like her family's reaction to her joining the industry as an overreaction. I just think that if you truly were involved in something that you believed in 100%, believed was ethical, and believed wasn't akin to being in a cult, you would have a logical way to refute their statements versus just mocking it, which is what she's doing in slide number 2, where she's talking about drinking the Kool-Aid. And instead of, again, denying the cult association with actual evidence and a proper rebuttal, she's embracing it and essentially doubling down on the behavior that her family is apparently telling her is problematic. I don't know. I think I've just watched so much of this type of content now at this point that to me, comments like,
pouring myself more Kool-Aid and brainwashing myself,
like, those are not jokes. Those have actual implications on real people. And at the end of the day, by saying those things, you're essentially just openly admitting that you yourself got manipulated and that you're continuing to manipulate other people. Like, is brainwashing not just manipulation? It's just another word for it. Even if you're trying to like frame it as a joke, it's not a joke. I think two different things could be true here. Either she's still in a position where she completely just lacks self-awareness and doesn't realize what kind of situation she's in. Or what's possibly even a worse scenario is that this is just a disturbing display of how she has been able to rationalize her role, not only in falling susceptible to one of these schemes, but then continuing to perpetuate it onto other people. So immediately after I was sent this video, I canceled all my plans. This was not supposed to be the video for this week, but I was like, we gotta talk about this. So let's go ahead and read the caption, and then we're gonna continue this discussion because I guess she kind of went viral for this reel. For context, this creator only has like 1,000 something followers on Instagram, but this video got over 150,000 views. It only got like 150 likes, which is kind of weird for that level of view count, but she ended up turning off the comments, so I'm assuming she probably got a lot of not so positive feedback. But I unfortunately wasn't sent this content until after that had already happened. So let's read the caption. We will look at a screen recording of her stories and then we'll continue the discussion from there. She looked me dead in the eyes and hurled, "You're in a forking cult and a worse person than before." You can imagine the gut punch. 9 months earlier, I was single AF, working a dead end 9 to 5, depressed from my family, torn apart from my parents' divorce. I knew I was meant to be a leader and build a business transforming humans from the inside out. Okay, why is this the same thing we see every single time? If you've been here on the channel for a long time, you know how much I hate a good old rags to riches story. We all have to feel as though we've risen from the ashes and overcome intense trauma, and now we are qualified to help other people overcome whatever challenges they face. It drives me freaking crazy. Not to mention the part where in the first sentence, she's saying this person was criticizing her and it felt like a gut punch. To me, I think is a key example of something we see a lot in the coaching industry where any kind of negative feedback is automatically referred to as some sort of attack versus valid criticism that should actually be considered. And I mean, I'm sure she's going to go even further into this as we continue to read. But to me, I think because the like us versus them mentality becomes very apparent when you get involved in one of these coaching schemes. To me, this is just evidence of that like actually displaying in practice. Okay, I put my booty on the line and joined a 2.5-year leadership program to learn coaching and personal development tools to create the life of my dreams. I invested 15 hours a week to master these tools like my life depended on it. 2.5 year program? That may be the craziest one I've seen yet. I mean, we've looked at a very famous 6 month program that then encourages you to take the 6 month program 4 times, which is like 2 years, I guess. But to sign up for a 2.5 year program right out the gate, damn, I wonder what program this was. I even found the courage to stand for the role of team leader and was chosen to lead and coach our cohort of 120 people. After falling asleep with tears on my pillow, I sat with this comment and clicked into a truth that lifted 20 pounds off my shoulders. I shrank and hid my involvement in the program to not ruffle any feathers. But this was my calling. These people were healing, breaking through the ceilings, and making impossible dreams their reality. If that's a cult, I'll brainwash humans with possibility and manipulate them into action all day. Again, the joking about brainwashing and manipulating people to me is giving cognitive dissonance. It feels really unsettling to read this, mostly because, in my opinion, she's essentially outright admitting to coercion, but then trying to frame it as this like aspirational situation that she was in. From that day on, I threw my whole heart into becoming the best coach slash leader that I could be. I went on to lead 99 people to meet their goals, built a reputation for heart-led Jedi coaching, and got a roster of paying clients with zero marketing. Now I've coached hundreds of 6 and 7 figure people worldwide, have clients re-sign 3 times for my coaching, lead the most transformational coaching program on the internet, and travel the world with the love of my life. Why does every coach claim that their program is
The most transformational coaching program on the internet?
newsflash? It's not. If you're all doing the same thing and you're offering the same things and you're learning from the same people, I promise what you're doing is not revolutionary. Maybe you are good at it, and I'm not saying this girl's good at it because I highly doubt it, but you can be good at what you do and not have it be the most, best, biggest, incrediblest thing on the internet, okay? Can we just stop with that? It's like the people who all say that they have the number 1% podcast. You can't all be in the top 1%. My voice cracked. I'm so upset. If you want to be a leader whose expertise is gold, but nothing compared to the way your clients become who they really are in your world, you get to own who you really are first. Okay, she's losing me here. I feel like this grammar is not very good. Stand for your truth. Throw your whole heart and soul into your craft. Blinders on, ignore negative feedback. Got it? I'm offering blah, 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 blah. She pitches her program. Are we surprised? Another coach turning their transformation into a sales funnel. I love that for us. Okay, if this wasn't enough, we're going to go ahead and watch her story replies because once she presumably didn't get the reaction she thought she would, she was a little upset. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so it starts with this slide over here, which says, wow, my first viral reel and trolls. Again, negating any criticism as valid feedback and automatically assuming anyone who says, maybe you are in a cult, haters, trolls, etc. We do not listen to the outside. This actually came up on stream the other day. If you were there, you know what I'm saying. If you weren't, you can go ahead and skip. It's near the end, the last like 15 minutes probably. We were just kind of having a little chit chat, me in the live chat. Anyway, during that conversation, we were talking about this idea of what it's like to be a coach actively in the industry, specifically in the like coaches coaching coaches subset, which is where I spent a little bit of time. And so I was sharing this idea that when I was a coach, when I called myself a coach back in 2018, 19, 2020, maybe, anytime I would receive feedback through the grapevine from other people, particularly I had like one friend who would funnel me information of like what other people were saying about me. And whenever those people would say things like, I think it's so stupid Danielle's a coach, who would pay for that, da 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 da. Any of that kind of like negative feedback that I would receive, rather than actually actively listen and consider it as valid criticism, I would immediately be like,
You don't know what you're talking about, actually. You just don't understand. I'm so much more enlightened and better than you, and I have myself all figured out.
things like that, where you're just like, you immediately take any kind of feedback that isn't pumping your tires, boosting you up as like, these people are trolls. They're just haters. They don't know what they're talking about. And that's not to say that all criticism is valid, but to immediately assume that anyone who questions what it is you're doing or makes comments that don't align with what you believe in, to automatically put those people off as trolls, to me, is a red fucking flag that you're involved in something that might be akin to a cult. Allegedly, in my opinion. My nervous system is calibrating, laughing emoji, but if it can help at least one person, I'm happy. And it was a breakthrough in not watering down my voice and hard times in my journey. Is there a piece of your authentic truth you want to share today? Go for it. Not really recognizing the validity of the initial criticism of her family saying that, like, hey, I think you're in a cult, but also then essentially just doubling down on that by presumably taking any kind of feedback where people are like, hey, maybe your family's right, and just immediately saying, like, these people don't know what they're talking about. Super interesting, but she does do a couple talking head slides, so let's go ahead and listen to those next.
So there is like something happening on a visceral, physical, emotional, spiritual, heart level with this video going viral and all these trolls. And I want to share this lesson with you today. This video is, in case you didn't see it, this video is about a time in my life when I was first introduced to coaching and a family member accused me of being in a cult. And initially, I allowed that experience to water down my voice, to basically like hide and sneak around about this passion and me pursuing it and not make all the right choices at the time. And ultimately, I owned that decision and I owned that this was my calling, and that was the impetus that allowed me to go all in on coaching and have this expertise and now be sitting here talking to you. But the sensation and what this represents is the thing that I think is important for you. Okay, next slide.
Okay, and then on the actual screen, it says, these trolls are causing a full body reaction and affirming a really powerful lesson I want to share with you. The reel was about a family member accusing me of being in a cult for being a coach, how I initially played small, but ultimately went all in on this passion to change hundreds of lives. Listening to this brings up memories for me, and those of you that have been actively involved in the coaching industry can probably relate to this, specifically because she keeps saying, like, going all in. And I really think that that kind of self-inflicted entrenchment can really cause us to put ourselves in situations where we're essentially entering an echo chamber. I know this is something I've talked about so many times on the channel, but this idea that oftentimes in these coaching environments, you're surrounded by tens, hundreds, thousands, depending what kind of program you're in, of people who are all following these leaders, and we're taught to believe the same things, say the same things. Again, if we get this negative feedback or questioning, we're supposed to tune it out. Don't listen to the haters. They don't know what they're talking about. They're not as enlightened as us. And I think that this approach, where we're so heavily attaching our identity and our self-belief to the rhetoric and the gospel of the people around us, is really what leads people so deeply into these coaching containers, as they like to call them. It really brings up the memory of the conversation that I shared here on the channel last week. I'll link the video here if you haven't seen it. But Cliff Notes version, essentially, this woman was in a relationship with her partner who got involved in a coaching program. And ultimately, her partner ended up choosing the coaching program over their relationship. And I think that what we're seeing in this set of Instagram stories is really giving me that same sense of experience. Like this woman who is sharing her Instagram stories, that's exactly what I imagined the coach that was talked about last week to be like. You enter this environment, your partner is saying like, hey, what are you doing? And you're like,
You just don't get it. I'm going to choose my coach over you.
that was like a really bad explanation. Go ahead and listen to that interview. It is truly gut-wrenching to watch, rewatch. Thank you so much to Alex if you're watching this video. But essentially what I'm seeing here is the inability to have any level of skepticism because you want so badly for this thing to be true, and the environment that you're likely in is telling you that it is true and that everyone else doesn't know what they're talking about.
The sensation that I feel right now in my, like right here in my gut, is the sensation that I felt when I was in that leadership program and there was 120 people, and there was this day where we were choosing who was going to be the next team leader, who was going to lead and coach the whole group of 120 people. And I felt this feeling the moment, at the very last moment, when I stood up and I snuck up on stage to volunteer for this role, and I was chosen for it. And I swear to you, I was going to poop my pants. And it's the same moment, the same sensation that I feel when I'm coaching someone and I go there. You know those moments, maybe you've seen the moment to go there, but you held back, or you have gone there. It's the moment where you're like, this is either going to piss this person off, or this is going to be the breakthrough of a lifetime for them. And that is the sensation of taking a stand for something, for someone, for your values, for who you really are.
Slide reads, take a stand for your values, who you really are, your clients, your community. You expand your capacity to hold. The sensation I feel about this video is the same one I feel when I go there in my coaching. Take a risk to possibly piss someone off or give them the breakthrough of a lifetime. I don't think that's what's happening here, though. Again, to me, this feels like avoiding the actual conversation. She's essentially equating the negative feedback she's received on this reel from all of those trolls to the fear she felt when she stepped outside of her comfort zone. And I think that by lumping these two things together, criticism from strangers on the internet with a feeling of being uncomfortable doing something unfamiliar, she's essentially trying to frame herself and her decisions, allegedly in my opinion, as someone who is bravely able to push past self-doubt. When instead, I think what's happening here, as someone who's been in these environments, who has ignored the red flags before, and now that I'm on the outside, I can see it for what it is, to me, and you can let me know what you think in the comments about this, it feels like she is actively choosing to ignore the red flags. This feeling of having to take a stand for what you truly believe in and what you truly value, I think, again, is her knowing deep down that there might be some level of truth to the criticism that people are throwing at her, but having to play such a difficult game of mental gymnastics with herself in order to be able to continue to pursue her coaching. Because if she were to confront that criticism and actually take a step back and reflect and think, is there any validity in what these people are saying? She might come to recognize and realize that the whole belief system that she's built her image and her business and likely her self-worth on might not be true. And I feel like this is the case for so many people. It took me at least 2 to 3 years to fully detach my identity as a coach from who I was as a person. Even after I left the coaching industry, there was so much guilt and shame and embarrassment for something that didn't work out, for something that was so deeply entrenched in how I presented myself online, that there was also like a level of failure, I think, associated with leaving the industry. And so I think that if she were to take a step back and think like, is what these people are saying potentially true? There would be a lot of unpacking and a lot of unraveling that would have to take place. And so rather than doing that, you basically just convince yourself like, nope, these people don't know what they're talking about. I'm just scared and it's uncomfortable, but I'm going to get through it. That's how I'm reading this. Please, please, please let me know how you're perceiving this in the comments, and let's continue.
You can't expect your clients, your people in your audience, you can't expect anyone who's in your clearing, who's in your space, to live fully, go for it, be in action, take big swings, if you're not fully living in integrity with who you really are and taking a stand for who you really are in the face of people not agreeing with you. The reason I'm a coach in the first place is because I am a stand for people living who they like, being who they really are in the world, creating a life that is theirs, that is their choice, life by their own design.
Interrupting this slide to just say that if you are leading a life that has been taught to you by someone else, then you aren't living in integrity. And I say that because what we see so often in the coaching industry is coaches that become carbon copies of the person who they're paying for coaching. And I just think that if I'm copying what Jane Doe is telling me to do, I'm not living my authentic life or in integrity with who I really am. I'm living in Jane Doe's version of what she wants me to become. Just an aside.
As a matter of choice and creation, not as a function of all the stuff that was given to you by your family and your parents and society and all of that stuff. That's who I am at my core and what I believe at my core. So I could not expect to have this expertise and create this impact without that choice.
Slide reads, you cannot expect your clients to live fully, go for it, be unleashed, and get massive results if you are not in integrity and take a stand for who you really are. Again, already made my point here about why I disagree with this. In every fiber of my being, I am a coach because I'm a stand for people living a life of choice by their design in the fullest essence of who they really are.
I'm not saying you need to be a social justice warrior, but what I am saying is there is a cost and a benefit to you being in integrity with yourself. Why do you think the one thing that is like most triggerable, embarrassing, hurtful, painful within me about my entire coaching expertise and career, why do you think that me finally sharing that to help somebody else and be vulnerable and authentic was the first video that I've ever had go viral?
Wait. She's saying that this is the one thing that's most triggering for her. The fact that her family thinks she's in a cult. Girl, have you ever considered that the reason it might be triggering is because what they're saying might be true? Again, if we could instead take criticism and reflect on it effectively, instead of just pushing everyone off as they don't know what they're talking about, perhaps then we would get to the root and reason as to why we feel so triggered by what they're saying. I'm just thinking of any time someone has made a comment about me, not necessarily having anything to do with coaching, but if they make a comment about my personality or something I did or something I said, oftentimes when I find myself getting super triggered by that, it's because there is a level of truth to what the person has said. So perhaps that's something that you need to consider. This is what irritates me so much about so many like coaches and just influencers in general, honestly, is like these people claim to be so self-aware and so enlightened, and yet they're the ones that lack the most self-awareness, in my opinion. Anyways, I'll let her continue.
What's the coincidence? It's because there's a difference between not taking a stand for something because you're still figuring it out behind the scenes, or you're like, yeah, I could take a stand for that. I don't really feel like it's going to move my life forward in any way, genuinely. Or you not taking a stand because you're putting someone else's comfortability above your own, or because you're more concerned about looking good or not hurting someone else's feelings than living in your own truth.
I don't think that's true, though. I don't think a reel where you're saying, my family thought I was in a cult, so I drank the Kool-Aid and stayed in the cult, essentially is what she said, is really taking a stand. Like, I totally understand the perspective of, like, if you post polarizing content on the internet, the trolls are going to come for you. I say this from experience. I'm doing an experiment right now on trial reels where I'm posting 5 trial reels every single day to try and figure out what the hell's going on over there. Basically, I posted this trial reel with my opinion saying that people need to stop shooting their content in 60 frames per second because it makes me motion sick and I hate it, and everyone should just shoot in 30 frames per second. If you have good lighting, it looks fine. That is apparently a very polarizing opinion. And so the comment section was people either telling me I was wrong or telling me I was right, or arguing with each other about who's right and who's wrong. That example of having a polarizing opinion is not the same as this. The reason why this went viral is because people want you to wake up. It's the same as, I don't know if anyone's been here this long or they remember the video I'm talking about. I will link it here. There's a video I did in Coachmas 2023, so not this one that just passed, but the year before, of a woman who had accumulated $70,000 in debt paying into coaching programs. And effectively, at the end of the video, she basically blames herself for making all of those investments. And that video went viral because people in the comments were saying things like, girl, you're in a cult. Girl, you need to recognize that these people are manipulating you, etc., etc. And again, in that video, she wasn't sharing a polarizing opinion. She was sharing her experience without the level of self-awareness to recognize what was truly happening, at least in my opinion. And again, I think that's what's happening here. This woman isn't sharing something that demonstrates what her values are or what stance she takes, so much as just not really being able to see from the perspective of the people who are providing that criticism, right? So I just think she's missing the plot here, but you can let me know what you think in the comments.
So if you made it this far, my invitation to you is to really sit down and take a look and feel into your heart space and see if there's something in the way that you've been coaching and serving your people, sharing your message on social media or anything like that, where if you're really honest with yourself, you're not taking a stand, or you're taking a stand against who you really are. And if that's the case, then what's the uncomfortable action that you can take to start to shift that and actually bring some truth, bring some authenticity, bring some vulnerability to the conversation, and see what that does for you as a human being, first of all, and then see what ripple effect that has across your client results and your business and your engagement and all of that all that juicy stuff.
So then text on screen just reads, self-audit. Are you really taking a stand for your values, message, clients, or can you dial it up with one uncomfortable, liberating action this week? Again, to me, she's not really taking a stance. She's mostly just publicly displaying the fact that she isn't really aware of what's happening. All right, I don't really have much else to say. My camera's about to die and I've been sitting here for 40 minutes. So I just really thought that this whole thing, watching it, was baffling. It was also a little bit heartbreaking to show how potentially harmful one's belief system can be when you put yourself in an environment or echo chamber where everyone around you is saying and believing the same things. Especially when the criticism that we're talking about is coming from a loved one, and presumably your loved ones are the ones that are most likely to have your best interests in mind. So high control environments are scary. Let's just leave it at that. I want you all watching this to stay safe out there. Do not join the Coaches Pyramid. Thank you so much to the channel VIPs for being here, as well as Tom, Harrison, and Suzanne in the billionaire tier, my rich friends. YouTube thinks you're gonna like this video right here. I will leave you on screen. Take care, comb your hair, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye-bye.